Call this meeting to order at 6:38 p.m. To begin, I'm going to start with reading what everyone's come to love. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the North Reading School Committee is being conducted via remote participation, except for the committee who's here in person, along with our superintendent and assistant superintendent. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. It should be a pretty quick meeting. Before we begin, we're going to, sadly, this has become a regular thing, but we're going to do a quick moment of silence because the North Reading School Department lost one of its own this past week. David Cook, the Secondary Special Education Coordinator, passed away on September 16, 2020. So we're going to do a quick moment of silence for Mr. Cook and his family. Thank you, everyone. Okay, for public input, if there's anybody from the public that has any comments or questions about something that's not on the agenda tonight, you can unmute yourself, or you can just type in the chat function. Hearing none, we're going to move on to the student report. We don't have a student representative here tonight, but we do have a statement from a student representative that I believe Dr. Daly is going to read for us.
So I would just like to share this from Shivi Shrikant. Shivi says, "Hi everyone, sorry I couldn't be here today. Just want to say a few words on school reopening. So far I think the school has done a fantastic job in handling the safety of staff and students, and I'm certainly learning a lot more than I initially thought possible through a remote model. The enforcement of cleanliness and safety has worked effectively, and none of the students I am in contact with feel unsafe or uncomfortable with the situation. I also think the hybrid model allows for a nice balance between the school routine and home routine, and learning time is incredibly popular among my peers and I. One of my concerns, which had been if I would be able to learn enough information for the 4 AP courses I'm taking, was quickly resolved by the amazing lesson plans my teachers have come up with. I know all the students are really excited for this year to continue to keep seeing our friends." She sent that along to me.
Excellent. And speaking of student reps, have they elected student reps for this year, or is that something that happens later?
They have not yet. I'm trying to get the exact information on that, but everything is just a little bit delayed due to the delayed start. So,
well, the main thing on the agenda tonight is continuing business, school reopening. I'll turn it over to Dr. Daly to give us an update on the school reopening.
Excellent. So I just wanted to share off the top before I forget, it came to my attention right before the meeting started about our flags being at half staff or not being at half staff. So I think that is something that we're going to correct tomorrow. It's certainly something that should be done in honor of Justice Ginsburg's passing, and that is something that we will correct for tomorrow. The reopening that I've shared with you tonight, I wanted to share some of the numbers. I shared a chart with everyone with the basically the representation of the breakdown of the cohorts A, B, C, and D. And as you can see, it's roughly a 40%, almost a pretty even split. Thank you, Michael. 40% between cohort A and 40% between cohort B. We then have about 11% of the students in cohort C and 7.8% of students that are in full remote at this time. And that, as I mentioned before, the 7.8% is much lower than any other district really I've talked to. The average, I would say, is between 15 and 20% of most districts for students participating remotely. And so that is, it's higher than was indicated in some of our early surveys. This is sort of the final number as things came into place. We also reached a point where some of the new students that were enrolling, we had a lot of students enrolling late, and at a certain point those students went into cohort D to start. We kind of enacted that because we had already set up our classrooms and everything was distanced properly. Made the decision to have any late enrollees start remotely, and then, within a reasonable time frame, we're hoping within 2 weeks we can place them in the cohorts as they want. We've certainly had some requests already for more students to begin coming in hybrid as they've seen it's been successful. So that has been happening. So we've now had successfully our opening of school with cohort A last Thursday, and cohort B and C last week, cohort A and C this week, and now we are now back into cohort B is back today. So we have started the second sort of time at the school for that second cohort. There have certainly been challenges and questions, but honestly, the feedback we've received overall, most folks and students and staff and everyone seem appreciative that we are making an effort to be in person as much as we are, and to be conducting work in this way. Students have, I have received several emails from parents on the remote aspect of the day, saying that it's different than it was in the spring. They see that the effort that the teachers are putting in, and they're sensing that it is different. It's definitely more live and academic. And just to be clear, as we've said all along, the idea is not that the students in remote are online all day. They're not opening their device first thing in the morning and following along all day long. They are checking in throughout the day, and they are getting their assignments and having lessons, and then there is time to do work remotely during the day. They should be engaged throughout that whole period, though. Obviously, there's going to be some time for breaks, as there would be in a regular school day. But that kind of feedback, if there is not the amount of work that the student should be working on is not sufficient, those are things that will be discussed and presented to teachers through continuous feedback. So I know that we're in competition tonight with the elementary parent night. I know there's some two-way communication going on there where the schools are working with parents, and we're certainly hearing and receiving feedback there to continuously improve. There are some other aspects that I think we want to discuss tonight as well. I know there's some questions around athletics, which is beginning very soon. We're having the practices, and our competitions are beginning closer to the end of the month. We're going to be competing in the Cape Ann League, having one event with each, one competition against every member of the Cape Ann League for the sports that are participating. I know there's been a lot of discussion. Mr. Buckley talked to me about the parental participation, and so I've reached out, in addition to Mr. Johnson reaching out to the athletic directors and Mr. LaCrette being in constant contact with the principals. I've also reached out to the superintendents just for confirmation that there hasn't been any changes, and everyone that's responded to me has been consistent in a 2-week, starting with 2 weeks of no spectators in the stands, similar to what we're seeing honestly in the National Football League and basketball, not having spectators at the event for those 2 weeks. Might be a little different than we talked about here. So what I've said to them, as always, if that's 2 weeks away, then we need to be thinking now about, okay, what does it look like if we do? So we need to start doing that planning now. So there is some discussion about what that could look like if we did have fans, how we could appropriately do this through some kind of a sign-in sheet or a form. One likely thought is that it may be home teams only are allowed to bring spectators, and it may be, as I've heard the Middlesex League has done, it's one spectator per student or 2 spectators, which is something like that, where we come up with a set number that's quantifiable, traceable, and probably limited to the home fans. And that way, it's just that much safer. And then obviously there'll be guidelines about distancing and spacing outside. And again, a lot of it is it's preventative and proactive, but it's also the tracing, right? We need to know who was at an event if we're hosting an event. And that's, certainly a liability issue as well. That if we just allowed anybody in there and something happened and then we weren't able to trace, that's problematic. So we need to have a very safe and secure process for an event that we host. In addition to that, we are also looking at options for live streaming. There are certainly ways to do this, on our phones or, in other ways to do it that's through Wi-Fi. What we really need to look at is something that's a little bit more robust, that it requires a hardwired internet connection, which we don't currently have. That was not something that was designed and installed at the turf fields. And that is something that we are going to explore and see what that project would entail. So I have a meeting with some folks tomorrow on that. And it's a conversation that I'm extending to the Parks and Rec Department, the town technology department, as well as NORCAM, just to see, to get all those players involved, to see what kind of resources and access we would want at that site. And internet is much more than live streaming, because it would also include possible Wi-Fi access. And think about all the events we're having in that field, not just sports, but community events, town meetings. I mean, there's a need for Wi-Fi, there's a need for coverage, there's a need for even something, controlling locks and automation of different lights and systems, all can be done through the internet, right? So having a hardwired connection will enable many things in addition to live streaming and obviously internet access. So we're thinking about like the press box, also the utility rooms in that area as well. So that is something we're exploring in that area. Were there any other specific questions about athletics? I know that was a topic that we wanted to discuss.
So, I mean, I would just say, Dr. We should identify ourselves again. This is Scott, because I know it's hard to see who's speaking. When Mr. Johnson was here, it was presented as it was a Cape Ann League rule across the, across the league. And so if it is not a Cape Ann League rule and districts are able to do different things, I think we should set our own policy. I think, and I also think there should be a distinguishment between indoor and outdoor sports, because if somebody's outside and they, maybe we close the stands, but like if somebody's outside and brings their own chairs and sits on the sideline for a soccer game, I don't see that quite as the same as going into the gym to watch a basketball game. And I just think we need to be thoughtful about that, because a lot of parents do want to go and see their kids, and I understand, the reason for that. So if there's registration, if there's limits, things like that, I think that's fine. I think we can think about maybe closing the public stands. We don't have to worry about closing them. But I think outside, we should really, do what we can to allow parents to be able to be there. Inside, I think, is a different story. Like, we've been very strict about not allowing people into the buildings. But I think, are there any indoor sports in the fall, or are they all outdoors?
These are outdoors.
They're all outdoor sports, okay.
Volleyball, some may be practicing in different ways outside, but they're not.
Yeah, but again, that's not spectators coming in, so.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we are, again, it's a Cape Ann consensus among all the districts to do something. So you don't want to be the first to break it either. It's sort of, we have an agreement about how to do this. So that's where the 2 weeks comes in, and that is a little different than what we talked about last time. So we're certainly going to revisit that after the season begins. And, folks are talking about, as Mr. Johnson, I believe, mentioned, maybe doing some of the senior nights and events earlier in the season, in case something happens and they're not able to have them at the end. Usually, it's the last game when you do things, but we might do them earlier. And so those would be nice events to have parents at if we're going to have that ability. So I think we're going to start thinking about that and getting that in place to see what it looks like. And so those conversations, like I said, need to start now so that we know what 2 weeks in we're ready to go. We're not a day, 13 days in and trying to figure out what we're going to do tomorrow. So that work is underway. But to start it right now on the first day, when all the districts have sort of, in the Cape Ann League, have agreed to 2 week phase-in. And remember that we're in a very different place too. Some of these districts are not even in school, and they're still trying to grapple with figuring out how to get kids in school. And so I think it's a good agreement that we have to do this all.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, if, we have to have enough teams to play. And so some teams don't want to do it because they're uncomfortable of, mixing, and that's what makes them be able to participate in the league. I understand that. But again, if there's going to be some people that allow it, I just want to make sure that we can draft a policy for us, because I do think, especially for outdoor sports, if people are socially distanced, and even if they bring their own chairs as opposed to sitting in stands. Yeah. Like I imagine right now we won't be stopping people from standing on the sidewalk, public sidewalk anyways. And so, I just want to be reasonable if we can.
I think that's a good benchmark for sure. And I think it's fair to say that the stands will probably be closed in that way, just because of the cleaning, the maintenance of them. But I think there'll be some other kind of accommodations, as you mentioned. That's what we're looking at right now. So we'll keep everyone updated on that as it develops.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes, thanks. Was it 2 weeks from the start of practice, or the 2 weeks from the start of games, or?
My understanding is that the first 2 weeks of the games season. Yeah, there's no change.
Which makes sense, I just want to clarify that. So it's not 2 weeks from this moment, it's from the games.
That's my understanding, yes.
Patrick, is it standard that visitors travel all together on a bus as a team, or can parents drive children to, like, away games?
Yeah, I think typically they're traveling on the bus, but I think, did Mr. Johnson address that, Michael, last week?
Yeah, I asked a
I
question
think
about
he did say that it could be possible if needed.
I was just thinking, you made a comment about, maybe starting with just like the home team having visitors, and I could just imagine like parent visitors that drove their kids to the game not being able to sit and watch them, having to find something else to do for the period of time would be a little bit interesting, but.
And it's different in different fields. Like as Mr. Buckley said, there's coming inside the gate, and then there's also other, there's other things too. Letting people into this setting and keeping track of them is what we're concerned with.
If I remember correctly, just to answer that question, I think it was, certainly anyone who in cohort D who's participating in sports, it would be reasonable to expect that the parent would want to drive them as opposed to put them on the bus with other kids. So I think that was going to be okay. So it's a good point.
Yeah, to my understanding, we're still you can't have more than 50 people. So I think that's the idea. If you've got 25 people on the soccer team and everyone brings 2 parents, that's your home team. If you're now letting both teams in, you're saying it's 1 parent per side or less than that. So I think that's part of the thinking around why it might be the home teams only. And you tend to have more crowd from your home side, because it's more convenient and whatnot. So, if that's where we can get to, and again, we can talk about that. I think when it does, I think it will look, I think once we get there, the protocols won't be the same in every town, but we will agree to have protocols, but we won't necessarily be able to dictate what happens at the away fields. That's going to be based on their facility.
Okay, any other comments on athletics? Right.
I don't know if you can hear me. Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Hi, this is Maureen Doherty, editor of the Transcript. Earlier in the week, was having a conversation with our sports editor, and he was asking if there would ever be a possibility for print media to show up at the home game. So just asking you to consider that one more individual, probably with a camera, would like to at least start covering our sports again. It's been a long time without any live coverage of real sports.
Sure. Yep, we'll definitely entertain that as well. Even I've thought about that myself. Like, I like to get to the games and see them, and it's like I don't want to be there. I don't want to necessarily take away spots from someone. There's certain rules for administrators there, but I think that that's something that would be reasonable. I do think there are rules, and then there is also one person from the media there to cover is able to then bring that, experience to so many more people. So, I mean, that one seat can definitely pay dividends, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense. As I mentioned before, we're hoping to live stream and have some of that done. And if that's recorded, I think, if there's a video stream, there might be a videographer, as well. So I think that's certainly something we're considering. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Other topics, Dr. Daly, on reopening?
Did you have some other? I know you had.
Well, I have a few questions, but I'll open it up to other people first, because I tend to talk a lot.
No.
I know. Shocking.
I'll jump
Chris?
in. Dr. Daly, I was wondering if you could, and this is Chris, yeah. I was wondering if you could give us, now that it's happening in concrete terms and you're going through it, what does common time look like? What does lunch look like? Based off of the last week in practice, how's that kind of been coming up?
Sure. I've had a chance to get around to all the schools. Michael, you can jump in as well, because Michael and I have been going around to see everything in action. At this building, you do have different areas. It's one of the things that Mr. Buckley talked to me about, if you don't mind me saying, is just about there was the idea, kids aren't allowed to talk. Is that true, right? Because things get shared. I think what was, said was, the more typical lunchroom volumes are high. And typical middle school especially, we're constantly saying, bring down the volume, right? Because that's one of our things in the lunchroom. I think, as we've discussed here, projection of voice can even increase droplets. And so I think that message has been said. We need to be quiet. We also need to be mindful, too, that we're not just in the cafeteria now. So we're also eating in a common area, that there may be classrooms or other things happening in the area. So being very mindful of the noise, but I've been in those spaces. They're not, it's not like I'll say like a detention, like you might picture, where everyone's just sitting there and not speaking. It's not like that, but it is much more calm than your typical cafeteria. And people are physically distanced, and so it's naturally it's just not as loud as it might be when everyone's kind of gathered together. Okay, so, but working well, the free lunches that we're able to provide, I think that they've done a great job coming up with some excellent options for lunch that are very attractive and boxed, and it's just very efficient and very quick. I thought it's been great. I don't know if you want to speak any more to some of the food service, Michael.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty smooth operation. We certainly have tried to curate the variety of options to the greatest extent we can, while preserving the safety of food. Most of the meals are prepackaged and packages and so forth. Each of the schools have been doing something a little bit different, but for the most part, the majority of the lunch period, the students at LT to kind of come down and retrieve their lunch options and have a packaged, prepackaged meal, and then either go to the cafeteria seat or go to an alternative area where they're seated for the day. And then in some cases, we are delivering them to the classrooms at some of the schools. But from what I've seen in my visits, I think the system is working pretty well, and there's enough transitioning time in between for that disinfection to occur, lunch transition. I've had an opportunity to observe some of the breakfast programs, and certainly participation is low. Certainly at the elementary schools, the participation before school program is much lower because of the earlier times. But there is an option there, and some students are taking advantage of it, which is good. So students that are there earlier in the program, they have the ability to receive a breakfast that meets all the food components and so forth. And then the first couple of days that stand out at the grab and go program, happening outside at school, and that was flowing, and it looked very similar to the program that was created, the emergency program that was created in spring, and a lot of folks that were here in the spring were also taking advantage of that on their remote learning days. So that seems to be operating well as well, and certainly been working with Ms. McGovern and analyzing the numbers and the participation, and we're hopeful that the participation will grow, and certainly in the remote grab and go program, we'd love to see those numbers increase and grow, advantage of that. So we'll continue to promote it and share some information. But I certainly think the food service staff, I think they all have stepped in, as we all have in some capacity through this experience, learn how to adapt and do our job a little bit differently. And I think the food service team, I'm certainly appreciative to their ability to do that, and everyone's certainly working hard to continue to deliver a high quality program.
On the food service, just one quick comment I was going to make also was I had a parent that said, because everything's free, she was worried that she was taking advantage of the schools by having their kids get a free lunch.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out to people that your kid buying lunch and getting it for free is actually helping the schools, because just like in the spring, what's happening is we have to pay for the food, but more than anything, we have to pay for the staff. We are trying not to lay anybody off. Every meal that is given away, we get reimbursed from the state for. And so you're actually helping the schools if you're taking those lunches. when people aren't using that, we're still incurring the expenses of the staff. And so, you know, like this parent said, okay, well, maybe she'll make a donation to the food pantry to, you know, alleviate her, you know, anxiety about taking something free from somebody else. But really, you are helping the schools when you take a lunch, unless I'm incorrect on that.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, so take your lunch home on Wednesdays if you're the half-day elementary and you're leaving, and
Right.
you know, take a free lunch when you're at school. It actually helps in North Reading.
Yeah.
All right, I'll swing by tomorrow morning.
Lunches are available. I don't know, I've heard some of the principals in our recap this morning that, maybe not all families do that, elementary age families do that on half-day Wednesday. The families have the option to take a grab and meal home with them, so, we're hopeful, that families will take advantage of that as well. But I think Mr. Buck is absolutely correct. So based on, USDA program and their extension of the free meals program, the district does receive a reimbursement of federal dollars at the price of a paid meal, as if we were charging for that meal. So we want to see that participation go up. The first week, we were roughly about 40% of the students were taking a meal, a school lunch meal that were in school, and it was less than 10% of students taking a meal that were remote. So we would love to see those numbers go up.
Excellent. Any other comments on lunch?
No, thank you.
Okay, Chris, other comments or?
No.
Okay, next comment. Diane, anything? Janine?
Just that, a parent made a very positive comment, similar to what Patrick Daly had said, that, her first grader, I believe, or second grader, the difference between, the initial remote learning, to what the school opening is, she said was vast. The teacher was phenomenal. She was, you know, making sure that the students who were remote weren't kind of daydreaming and stuff. She said it was much more concrete, that she felt very good about it. Just a positive comment.
Rich?
So I was going to ask, sort of along those lines, how you think the professional development time and the training worked over the 10 days that were given, especially in terms of improving, you know, that classroom experience for everyone.
Sure. So I think it was great. I worked with Mr. Clean and Dr. Downs and the rest of our administrative team, and with input certainly from the teachers union as well, and paraprofessionals, to develop, I think, a great use of those days. We had health and safety in the first week. You got some of those core essentials discussed and developed there. The second week was a lot of technology driven around it, basically an essential question that's going to govern our entire year, which is how do we teach differently now that we're teaching in a hybrid fashion? Right? So that question is driving the professional development. It's also driving our goal setting process for educator evaluation this year. So one of the goals that all the educators in the district are going to have is that question. And they're going to address it a little bit differently depending on their particular areas and their entry points, but that is a driving goal. We also framed it with UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, with that question of, okay, if we design our lessons thinking in remote, and we're incorporating that, and now we have students in front of us, how do we make this, an ideal, make the best of the situation we're in, honestly, with the hybrid situation. And I think by framing it that way, that took some of the stress out of the situation. There's still challenges there, but they're technical challenges about how to manage, and I think they're designing great lessons. Dr. Downs and his team, we provided many different versions of workshops. They were all recorded. They were on demand. So folks, again, similar to the spring, a lot of feedback. Some of the most glowing peer feedback I've seen in my career has been during this time. So teachers taking the time to write their principal or to write a colleague and copy me, copy Dr. Downs, copy the principal, just praising our digital learning staff for how supportive they are in seeing something through and making it happen. So I think that's great. We've also rolled out sort of the parallel this, some supports for parents, and there was a series of workshops yesterday for parents, as well as many, many resources and so many districts are putting together these resources and tips and tricks, and so we're just trying to harness that and share that with everyone as well. The third week of the professional development was a lot of collaboration time, but also we allowed those visits with the students coming in. And honestly, that was really it was great the way it worked out for a couple of reasons. For the students, obviously, to come in very small groups to experience the school, to see the flow of the arrows on the floor and where the cafeteria is, and to follow that and understand the schedules. But honestly, for the teachers and staff, to a T, when I went to my visits after those days, everyone just said it all kind of made sense once they saw the students here. And a lot of the anxiety level of the teachers went way down. Students were comfortable. Students were happy to be back. They were excited to be back. And when you saw the students in their seats, everyone felt like, this is why we're doing all this, and it really kind of clicked. So having those opportunities on those days, I think was a great way for the teachers to begin that conversation around, here's what this year is going to look like. So those last few days were that, and then it really set us up well for our first day. And as I said, we've now been through, a cycle once, and, there's some kinks. We've worked them out. There's some, we've done some adjustments to the start times, the busing times, and the middle school was getting a little bit late there, so we played with some of the times, and I think, there's things to work out every year. In any typical year, there's things to work out. There's anxiety around this on the parent side, on the administrative side, on the school side. I think everything is always heightened this year because it's just, everything is, COVID. So I think, we've been working well to respond and to answer folks on those fronts as well. So, there's still certainly details to work out. There's still questions to work out. I think, one thing we've done a lot of too, as I mentioned, there was health and safety. I've met weekly, sometimes multiple times a week with our nursing staff. We have 6 nurses. Cynthia Conant also is the director. Colleen Reska is the lead nurse. Has been fantastic. Thinking through scenarios, thinking through what do we do in this situation, what do we do in that situation. So I did send something out today about in response to Merrimack College and what's happening there. We do have some students in our district with siblings at Merrimack. There are many of us, myself included, who have connections to Merrimack as well. And just to sort of assure the community that we're on top of this and we're responsive. And we were already in process, and sometimes it's just taking a step back from the work we're doing to make sure it's communicated out that we're doing this work. So, but thinking through different scenarios, what would we do in this situation? What would we do in that situation? And to be honest, there's a real balance between being very, very cautious, making sure that everything is safe, as safe as possibly can be, but also not overreacting to the point that we can't have anybody here, right? So I don't want to be in a situation where, contacts are all staying home just to be extra safe, but then we don't have enough staff to open the building, right? So there's that delicate balance there of just finding that sweet spot of this. So we've made some rules and some adjustments. The daily health screener has been very helpful, I think, just as a proactive tool. That's something, again, that the teachers union asked us to do, and everyone's been great, staff and the students filling that out, asking questions, and it just serves as that extra reminder and it's sort of a heads up. It gives you a pause as you're filling it out. Should I talk to the nurse? Should I ask this question? Which I think folks were doing anyway, but this just gives you that extra layer. And it's been very helpful data for us, quite honestly, to look at and to go through. And it's, I think we've answered a lot of the questions. We piloted that with the staff during those PD days as well and worked out a lot of kinks and came up with that really key box. I think Mr. Buckley might have suggested about, if you've got allergies and you talk to the nurse, you don't have to talk to her every day. So we have a box that specifically speaks to that, which is cut down on some of those, the form piece of it. But I think we've got some great information.
And how about on the buses? Obviously, Scott and I were happy to be able to act as bus monitors for the first day in each of the cohorts. But how's it gone? Otherwise, I know the original hope was to have bus monitors all the time.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's going along fine without that?
It was all downhill after us, Rich.
Yeah.
Saying.
My thought would be, my thought was, you know, a big reason why there was a push for the bus monitors originally is the original guidance said we need to take temperatures on the bus every day. And part of the thinking was, how are we gonna take, you know, we're gonna have the driver has to drive. Who's gonna take the temperatures? Who's gonna monitor? When the bus guidance eventually came out, the temperature piece was not a part of it, and the students are so spread out that it could be because I was on it. My bus was pretty quiet. I mean, it was not a boisterous bus that you picture from the movies, right? It was, kids were happy, they were fun, they were excited to be there, but they weren't, you know, it wasn't crazy crowded. It's just the numbers. It's a big vehicle with kids spread out. And I think, in my opinion, that, you know, that need for the monitors is much less than we thought it was going to be. And we're able to use some of those resources then to have more staff in the buildings to help out with the remote learning and the in-person learning. So I think that's how that's worked out. I don't know if anything else.
Yeah, I would agree with Dr. Gary's comments. I think the distancing on the busing and the 1 seat per bench and just the ridership alone has allowed their I think the need for the monitors is buses. But I certainly appreciate
Well, Scott said he'd do it every day.
you
So.
know, in serving in that role, in all the central office staff and Dr. Daly and everyone that kind of generously kind of took part in that process last week and the beginning of this week. I think it was helpful at the start of each cohort's first day that there was someone on the bus to greet the students and help them find their assigned seat.
And it was great for me because I never get to see students, so
Yeah.
I enjoyed it and found it very useful.
Yeah, so I definitely appreciate it.
You know, so Mr. Conlon and Rosalie McKell came up with a system. They have little stickers for every student. The bus seats are numbered, and they got a sticker right on their bus pass. It felt a little silly giving a high school kid, don't forget, bus 10, but they loved it. They were the most excited. And they all wanted me to put their sticker on. They didn't, they said, you put it on, so I'm putting stickers on the high school kids' pass. It's kind of funny. But they, you know, that's all with the contact tracing too. So with the monitors as well, you're thinking you need to make sure to know who was where, but with the seating chart that we came up with, it really is pretty clear about where people are. So if there ever is a need to trace.
And by especially in the elementary schools, it's by age, practically.
It is.
By grade, yeah.
Yep.
Right, so we tried to, the ridership was low enough that we were trying to leave space in between the grades for if additional families to start to participate. We tried to, in the grade 3, we tried to have a spot in the middle, bench on the bus for them, for those students that may join throughout the year. So, yes, it was certainly as typical. It's not too unusual that we're still working through some timeliness and trying to establish a pattern of the buses. It's kind of the process we would go through in a normal or typical year. We monitor the schedule for the first week and the arrival times and the departure times in the afternoon. It's always the tiers 3 and the 4, which is kind of flip-flops, right? So it used to be the hood and the little and the back to school runs that we were trying to make time in the afternoon and in the morning, and now it's kind of the high school and middle school runs being the 3rd tier and the 4th tier. So we've monitored that over the last week and then again this week. And effective today, we instituted some changes in the pickup times of some of those runs at the elementary level, and actually at each tier, to try to allow the high school, middle school runs to run a little bit more on schedule. And I think today was the first day of the change, and it's more the middle school that we're trying to make sure the students arrive by 8:50 is the goal, a little after 8:50 at the latest, where I think earlier this week and late last week, it might have been, I think we were looking at almost 9 o'clock or after 9 in some cases. So we are, I think today was much better. I talked to Ms. O'Connell, and I think we're definitely getting much closer. So I'm pretty confident as we go, and the drivers develop an understanding of what students are in which cohort and what loops they might not need to do on a given day because they know that student is cohort B or cohort A, that we'll be able to run much more on schedule. So, you know, there's been some issues we're working through, and as we normally do, but I'm confident we'll get it much better.
Well, thank you, Mr. Connolly. For my comments, I'm just going to say, I'm going to start very broad and then have a couple specific things, but very broadly, I mean, I would just say, I don't think I've ever been prouder to be in North Reading than in the last couple of weeks. You know, we tend to fight about the silliest things here and get 300 comments about coyotes and whatever else in this community, but this community has stayed together through this. I mean, I was again, on Facebook, I'm in a group with my daughter's class, and somebody was saying, like, how do I use Seesaw? I'm having some issues, and other parents were helping out. The teachers have been great about, you know, responding to things. I went to one of the tech sessions. I was the only one there for some time, so I couldn't turn my camera off, but, you know, people are going out of their way. I know this is hard on teachers, but they're all super positive. You know, they're happy to be back. The kids are happy to be back. You know, the community is staying together, and it's one of the most challenging times, but I think we all appreciate what we have here. And, you know, we don't, again, in this room, we don't all completely agree about what the plan should be. In this community, we certainly don't agree, but we all understand it's not perfect, but we're trying. You know, we're trying to do this. We're trying to find middle ground. We're trying to educate our kids. We're trying to get people back. And, you know, I've been very proud to be here you know, throughout all this and, you know, see the planning that's gone into it and how people have kind of stayed together. So that's been great. You know, the leadership by Dr. Daly, by Michael Connolly, and even something simple like, you know, the two of you being on the buses on day one. Again, that means a lot. I mean, there was actually a reason to be on the buses, but also just that you're willing to, you know, do that is important. And so I think that was great. You know, if anybody is at home and needs a bus pass, there's a lot of seats still available on some of those runs, except in the middle school. I think all of the buses were pretty empty that I was on. But, you know, it's all gone as well as could have been expected. You know, there's glitches, but they're working through them and people are staying positive and not freaking out about it. And so I've been extremely happy about it. I forwarded a couple things that I heard, spectators, things like that. The only other specific questions I would have is, the one thing that we didn't address yet is, like, without lockers at the middle school in particular. Yeah. I know that I heard a few parents that said, my kid weighs 70 pounds and her backpack weighs 20 pounds. Like, and without lockers and bringing everything back and forth, there's been a few things about that. I don't know if there's anything that can be done for that.
Yeah, I can give an update on that as well. So I tweeted a few things that I saw from 6th grade. The teachers certainly have revisited now what's needed every day, what needs to be going back and forth. Once we're here, we're able to see that and address that issue. So that's certainly on the administration and the teachers' radar. Also going to reconsider now that we're in about lockers at the middle school as well. There may be a way to do something with that if needed. So again, what can't happen is we can't have kids congregating at the lockers as we typically would. But what we may be able to do is to use lockers. The students are essentially staying in one space that are able, you know, if it's managed on a homeroom basis, small groups at a time, not you know, keeping a distance when they're accessing them. We might be able to do something with that as well. But I think as the year starts, you realize I don't need that anthology every single day. I don't need this, you know. So I think we're certainly doing that. So I saw something that Mrs. Brown, I think, had posted, and I forwarded that along just to show that is being addressed. And that's similar to what's happening in conversations across the district in all areas. But we're having similar conversations in a lot of towns about, you know, what materials are needed when you're home, what materials are needed when you're here, and trying to streamline. Just a couple of things I wanted to make sure I touched on as well. The extracurricular activities in general, we have said as an administrative team that those would begin on around October 5th. So we are currently just working through with all of our staff what those activities would look like this year. How does chess club look this year, and how's it going to run? How does Masters look? How, you know, different clubs, and those are being proposed through the principals to consider how they can run safely and what they would look like. So those activities will be starting very soon. It's typical that those don't start the first day of school anyway. So that's happening. But we established that time frame to kind of safely look at it. But some other extracurriculars, band and the plays and musicals, those type of activities, some of those have already started similar to the athletic schedule. So those things are well underway, just to make that clear. Remote learning assistance, I just wanted to follow up. I know that Mr. Buckley and I have been meeting continuously with the rec department and with Mr. Gilberto and Chief Murphy, just to make sure there's a safe possibility to do this. I know that they're working very, very hard. I want to thank them for their support. I think it was clear from some of our early surveys that there was an interest in town about this, and we've sent out a couple of other surveys for the rec department. They're trying to work out the logistics. It's very challenging. There's just a lot of different logistical challenges that they face. So, stay tuned. I think that they're working on some more items there. I've also shared out about the flu clinics in town. I'm going to send another reminder. There are some additional dates. This is not the only way to get your flu shot. It's a great opportunity. There's no way that, we don't have 2,500 opportunities at these booths, but it's definitely just another way to do it. But you can also still see your doctor or go to a local pharmacy that are offering flu clinics as well. And the last part I wanted to make sure I touched upon is the calendar. So in our calendar that was approved, we had some TBD dates. What we wanted to be able to do with those is to revisit. So these are for the half days. And so it's sort of the consensus right now for the next half day, which was scheduled for October 9th, would be to not have that as a half day and have that as a full day. We're still, the teachers union as well as the administration felt that we are still just getting our feet wet and getting on the ground with the school year. To have a half day at that time is not something that we need. We will sort of just continue through until the November 3rd day, which is when we would have a full day PD as scheduled. So we would continue with that day, and we would continue to revisit how we need or what we use for half days. So we sort of had 5 half days in the schedule, and we may at some point need them, and depending on what the scenario is at the time, whether we need some more time. But we did build some collaboration time into our regular scheduled day, and we feel that that's different. So my thought is that we would move ahead with the cancellation of the half day on the 9th of October and just have that as a full day of work. So I don't know, when we did this in the spring, we sort of left them out there. That's what was approved, and then when TBD was approved, and then it was up to the district to pass this on. I think it's important to discuss it publicly. I don't know whether it requires like a full vote. I didn't have it on there as a vote, but we can talk about that however you want to do that.
I think do we have another meeting before then or not?
We would on the 5th. Yeah, so we could officially vote.
At worst, we could officially vote on the 5th.
Yeah, I'd like to know, I'd like to let people know though, after tonight that is the plan and that we will officially vote it on the 5th. Does that make sense?
Does anyone have any issue with making a full day?
No.
Well, when we voted on it, I think we worded it to be fluid, so
That was
it makes sense.
the design of the calendar.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'd be okay if we didn't vote on it either, as long as we discussed it publicly, but yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, I just would like to give folks the heads up that that's a full day of the plan, and even our cafeteria to make sure they know it's a full day for lunch and all those things. So, we still have a few weeks, but it's here before we do it.
My other question, Dr. Daly, was how is the tech held up? I mean, with everybody being on Chromebooks and people being at home, I mean, how overall, I mean, I'm sure there's glitches here and there. Like I mentioned to you before the meeting, like one of my kids, it was fine except for when they tried to share a video. That thing kept freezing. But I mean, overall, how has the tech been?
Yeah. Overall, I've heard very little issues with it. I think whenever you add a variable, whenever you add video, it makes it that much harder, right? And so there is a learning curve with that, and that can be a variety of different things. We've invested heavily in our Wi-Fi and our infrastructure and our devices, but it's more apparent than ever that we need that upkeep of the devices. I'm really concerned about some of the teachers. I mean, we have the teachers at the elementary schools, their laptops are 10 or 11 years old, and at a certain point, the cameras aren't going to work right, the microphones, all those pieces, they're kind of holding together and doing the best we can. As we upgrade some of those devices, like I said, there's just never been a greater need. We've used every device we have and distributed to students. All the devices have been, just about all the devices have been distributed. I think kindergarten, we're still working on the final rollout for that as well. But some of those devices are a little bit older, and as they, have a need that we can move on. But we always were very, I want to say we future-proofed as best we could. The Chromebooks, when they came out, were 2 gigabytes of RAM. We kind of held out for the 4 gigs. And so I think some of the stories that we're hearing out there is that some of the specs on the Chromebooks that they've purchased just aren't up to the processing that needs to happen. I haven't heard of those issues here, fortunately. So it's been pretty good so far. But we do have to keep moving forward with those needs to update the staff equipment and update the student equipment. So we're in a good place right now, but there's going to be, you know, quite honestly, we've never used devices as much as we're using them right now. You know, every day for multiple hours a day, just the wear and tear is just that much more of a concern moving forward.
It's quite the stress test.
If the keys, you know, one of the things with the Chromebooks is the keys will fall off after a lot of use, and they're hitting the keys a lot more than they've ever hit them. So there's just more and more and more. So getting part of one of the things we were able to do this year was to have a technician to address some of these things in-house. That's been a big help. So certainly something we're paying close attention to.
So any other comments on the reopening? Any questions from the people that are attending in virtual land? Okay, I think we'll move on. And I think that was sort of a lead in a little bit to the town meeting articles. The reason this is on there is article number 9 addresses capital expenditures. Before we just speak about article 9 and vote, I know that we spoke the last school committee meeting about prioritizing the Hood School list, the HVAC at the little school. But we also talked about technology and possibly trying to, bifurcate it maybe into, what Dr. Daly was just talking about, teachers, computers and things like that. Was that discussed at all at the capital improvement, meeting, or did we come up with a number, anything like that, or?
So I had this meeting before it ended, but part that I was involved with, they did review a list of large capital projects that the CIC initially, based on feedback from various committees and departments, and the feedback I brought back to them from the results of our meeting on September 24th was the 2 priority projects was focusing on safety, would be the Hood School list, and the Little School HVAC. They did identify a list a little over $800,000, I believe, which is a combination of one of the DPW town projects and the Little School HVAC, and the Hood School list was certainly on that list, priorities on that list. The technology conversation came up, and I don't know if it was talked about anymore. I know the fellow was on the call, but it wasn't on the list based on the list that was approved at the start of the meeting.
And do we know, Dr. Daly, like if we had to replace all the teachers' computers in particular, like again, smart boards, things like that, I think are not as high a priority, but like the teachers' computers, if that's one of the issues that we end up having, do we have an idea what the cost would be to just do that piece of it? Do you know?
So, that is what's identified. The teacher laptop replacement is part of what's in our plan because of the age of devices. We're talking, 200 devices or so at, $500. So, we've always budgeted, in our request with the capital a little bit less because we understand what a big number of these things are, and I think to phase them up. But I would want to, believe it or not, the devices and laptops we bought for this building when they open are now 7 years old, which is a lifetime for a computer. The elementary school ones are that much older, right? So I would start with the elementary ones. Those are the ones that are not only old in terms of speeds, but also in terms of wear and tear. So that would be the area that I would be very concerned with as well. And then, a lot of the Chromebooks we've been able to distribute are newer. We need the capital funds to continue the program for the future classes, and then we also would need, now that we have moved into the younger grades, we would need to keep that up. And so again, that's not something that was on our radar last year. We didn't know that we were going to need devices necessarily for every student one-to-one in the elementary schools. That's certainly something we've been presented with that we've taken on. So, I certainly would like to see that still as a part of the capital. I think the HVAC and the safety issues are very, very important, but I also think we've invested heavily in those systems. I think, we also need to continue to invest in our technology piece moving forward.
Yeah. We're in the process of taking a look at our 5-year capital plan, after our 5-year capital plan. So it's a little bit behind our original schedule, but the CIPC, I think, schedule is going to be revised. Investing needs are going to start later. So we plan to come at an October school meeting to present the large capital plan. At that point, we're going to take a much closer look at the technology and what did not get funded through this process this year, and look at what types of items that are needed, and we'll make revisions to that capital plan going forward. I do know there was no technology that was included on the town capital plan. It was mostly facility building related, the engineering project on Brown Street, which took up the majority of the conversation. That's the largest ticket item of a little more than $500,000. So I think from the CIPC's perspective, the town technology can go forward either on that list. So we'll certainly have to, as David mentioned, have to look at the fact that we did not get that $45,000 allotment and revise that request in our 5-year plan going forward.
I mean, maybe this is only my comments here, but I agree with health and safety first and foremost. Have to keep the little school warm. We have to keep, people that have special needs getting into the hood building. But with that being said, the teachers have to be able to, we have to give them the tools to teach in a hybrid model. And, with the school budget right now, it's being stretched. We've already heard tonight that bus ridership is down. That means we're not getting as much, we're going to be subsidizing some of the bus funding this year. We're not having as many people take lunches. That means we're going to be subsidizing food service most likely this year. Again, maybe not, but again, that's a possibility. We're not renting, the Performing Arts Center out. We're not renting the gym out. There's a lot of areas where we're not making revenue this year, and there's a lot of additional expenses this year, and it's something that is, concerning me early on in the budget year, and it's something that I think we need to bring up at the finance planning team meeting.
Yep.
And, something that I was a little bit concerned when I saw the town warrant article. We haven't had a finance planning team meeting in a while, and it was canceled again this morning, but I think we're supposed to speak next week.
Yep.
But that is just something that I think we need to have on the radar where, again, I'm not saying every teacher's laptop necessarily needs to be replaced in 1 year, but, I have a feeling there's going to be laptops that need to be replaced this year.
Yeah.
And I just don't know where we have it in the budget, in our budget without having some extraordinary, relief outside of that. So, yeah, just my thought from looking at that.
We talked about that in those meetings, not that specifically, but about the possibility of something new coming up. So I think it's something we can bring up.
So with that being said, we have been trying to have the school committee weigh in on any, large capital items or large budgetary items for the town. We do have a town meeting coming up on Saturday, October 5th, 3rd, October 3rd. Hopefully some of us can make it there, maybe get a quorum at least in case issues do come up, but should be pretty straightforward. But just in case we don't have a quorum there, I think it makes sense to try to vote on the one item that I think we should be heard on, which is Article number 9. And the hood school and the little school HVAC is on that right now. So I think we should entertain a motion for that. If something else changes before then and we have a quorum, we can always vote on it, at the meeting. But, I think just in case, know what's going to happen, it would be nice to have a vote from the school committee before that. So if Mr. McGowan wouldn't mind, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve Article 9 on the town warrant.
I will move that the committee vote to recommend passage of Article 9 on the town warrant for the October 3rd town meeting, the amend fiscal year 2021 capital budget.
A second.
Any discussion on? So this is a motion to recommend. We obviously don't approve it. He said recommend, I think.
I did say.
And roll call vote. Rich?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Diana?
Hi.
Janine?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. So passes 5-0 unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Now routine matters. We have minutes. Mrs. Imbriana, would you mind leading us in our minutes?
Certainly will. I'll make a motion to accept the executive session minutes for September 10th, as read.
Second?
Any discussion, any issues, any changes? Looking, were we all there? We were. So we'll do a roll call vote. Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Hi.
Chris?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
I would also like to make a motion to accept the open session minutes of September 10th, with the exception, or a change, I should say, to the executive session, the committee voted by Mr. McGowan and myself to come back into open when it was actually Chris and Mr. McGowan. So with that change made, everything else looks fine. So I make a motion to accept.
Second?
Any comment? I was totally going to catch that too. Do a roll call vote. Janine?
Aye.
Diana?
Hi.
Chris?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. 5-0. Thank you. Any budget update, Mr. Connolly?
None this evening, but we'll have one in October, to reflect activities through the first quarter.
Well, thank you. People buy lunches. We need you to buy lunches.
Right.
Staffing.
Better take lunch.
Take lunches. Free lunches, people. Dr. Daly, update on staffing?
Yeah, just including your packet, I've had the pleasure of having virtual meetings with everyone as they come in. It's been really just great to put a name with a face and to see some of the folks we've hired. Julie Swanson, a special education paraprofessional, is a long-term sub. Ashley Duke, art teacher at the bachelor school. Amy High, general paraprofessional, full-day kindergarten. Those are all at the bachelor school. At the Hood School, Deb Garabalisi is a half-day kindergarten teacher, paraprofessional, that's taken on the teacher role this year, which is wonderful. Maria Gibson as a general paraprofessional, 0.5 half-day kindergarten to support our 5-day-a-week program across our schools. At the Little School, Kathy Trahan, special education teacher, and Elizabeth Sotheby, special education paraprofessional. Jody Elmas is a general kindergarten paraprofessional, again, expanding that program to support our teachers and students in their 5 days a week. At the middle school, we have a long-term substitute school psychologist, Kelsey Coughlin, and a long-term substitute library media specialist, Kathleen Curley. At the high school, Deborah Warren, special education paraprofessional. And at the district level, building custodian, Martin Marstarian, and Kathy Dasho is returning. She retired in the spring, and she's returning to help us out as a support technician for this year. So we're very excited to be adding some staff to our team this year. So we did have some leaves of absence for various reasons. We filled it with a lot of long-term substitutes. And we've been able to fund a few positions to help us deliver our hybrid model. So it's been great. I enjoyed meeting with those people.
I know that I keep seeing the employment emails. Do we still have a number of positions available, or are we doing pretty well there?
We're doing well. I would say that they're still building substitutes, Michael. We could probably get a few positions that are there. I think, I'm trying to think, there's a few other, we've been conducting some interviews with HR, but we've had some good candidates, and we're hoping to make some decisions there very soon as well. I think just about all the other positions have been pretty well covered.
There's 1 or 2 long-term substitute positions, but I think it's getting close to filling.
Do we have some building subs at least?
We do.
Okay.
We do. Yeah, the plan, the original plan was 2 building substitutes at each school. So as of next week, we'll have the 2 at the high school, the middle school, and the Hood. The Bachelor Middle could use one more each. So
Pretty good.
we're hoping to find.
If I'm gonna be a bus monitor, maybe Mr. McGowan can, be the building sub.
I'm not sure that would be my strength. but-
Okay, well, thank you very much. Bids and donations, Mr.
Sorry.
McGowan.
Yeah, supposed to wait here, over here. Where'd it go? Are you bringing it up, Mr. Connolly?
Yeah.
Oh, here it is, I got it. I move away from my program, I can't find it to get back. I move that the school committee vote to accept with gratitude an in-kind donation from Mr. Scott Ellis, a North Reading resident and member of the Diamond Club, for electrical work associated with the new baseball and softball scoreboards valued at $1,000.
Second?
Any comments, discussion? Roll call vote. Rich?
Aye?
Chris?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, 5-0, thank you. And moving on, subcommittee updates. There were no subcommittees. Should probably start scheduling subcommittees again. The only thing I'll mention on subcommittees, and I was gonna mention this earlier, in the school update. I know a lot of work was done over the summer, you know, with the teachers, with parents, and I'd just like to say that, you know, I think we all realize a lot was done to start the school year, but we still have a long way to go. And so, you know, I know that I speak for myself, and I imagine everybody here in saying, you know, we are more than welcome to continue to hear if there's ways to improve, if the teachers or, you know, unions have concerns. We want to continue working with them. I mean, it's really important that we all stay on the same page. And so, you know, even though we got a memorandum of agreement signed with the teachers, I would just say, you know, I think it's very important that they understand that we are still here with them. And if there are things that we didn't think about and we need to, you know, go back and discuss things again, you know, I think we are all here to do that. You know, and if parents are having concerns, you know, reach out. Like, none of us are perfect. This is an unplanned year. We're planning as best we can, but there's so many things that we couldn't have taken into account. And so, you know, I just think, you know, some of those groups may have ended formally, but the idea of continuing to talk about issues is, you know, still something that I think is very important.
And as I've mentioned all along, we've, you know, formed those groups, we empower existing groups. So our parent advisory committee still exists, and I will be reaching out to start that group. Now that school started, I think a lot of these subcommittee groups will be coming together again to check in. So more to come on those.
Okay. Administrative report, Dr. Daly?
Not at this time.
Any correspondence?
Not at this time.
Okay. Just say thank you to everybody who came. Very happy to be back. Before we close, I just want to give a shout out to the middle school because my son started this year and they've been extremely welcoming. And, you know, I think, you know, just as a parent of a kid who's going into a new school, it's really, really hard. And I think, you know, and I'm sure this happened at every level for kindergarten and preschool, but, you know, they've gone out of their way to make, you know, the new class feel welcome. And so, you know, it's very hard for, you know, going into a brand new school this year. And I think the staff in North Reading has been tremendous in, you know, helping with that. So personally, I just thank them. Future business, October 3rd, we have the town meeting. It's right here at 11 a.m. outside, hopefully. And we're prepared to go inside if needed.
We are prepared to go inside if needed. And we are going to post that meeting.
Okay. And then October 5th, a virtual meeting with, well, the public virtual, I assume will be in person again.
Yeah.
Or if there's nothing more, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call. Janine,
Aye.
Diana,
Aye.
Chris,
All right.
Rich.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, 5-0. Thank you, everyone.